I thought installing a simple upgrade to my home would bring peace of mind and maybe even raise my property's value. Instead, it sparked a war that nearly tore my neighborhood apart. One morning, I walked outside to find the project I had invested in destroyed, ripped out as if it never belonged to me in the first place. But here's the shocking part. The very people who claimed to be protecting the community were the ones behind it. What they didn't expect was that their petty act would backfire in the most humiliating way possible. How far will an HOA go before their own rules destroy them? At first glance, my neighborhood seemed like the kind of place anyone would be lucky to call home. Rows of neat lawns, identical mailboxes, and houses painted in regulation-approved shades gave off the illusion of order and stability. On weekends, you'd see kids riding their bikes, neighbors exchanging polite nods, and the occasional block party where everyone pretended things were perfect. For me, it was supposed to be a fresh start. I had worked hard to buy my home, a modest but comfortable place where I imagined peace after years of saving and sacrifice. I enjoyed small routines, watering the garden in the early mornings, sitting on the porch at sunset, and quietly taking pride in being part of a safe, well-kept community. But beneath the polished surface, there was something unnerving. The homeowners association wasn't just about keeping the grass trimmed or the fences uniform. It felt more like an invisible force, always watching. Letters would appear in mailboxes over the smallest things. A trash bin visible for too long, a flower planted outside the approved pallet, even a child's toy left in a driveway overnight. First, I brushed it off. Rules are rules, I thought, and maybe this is just the price of living in a nice neighborhood. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about community standards at all. It was about control. And when I decided to make one simple change to improve my home, I had no idea it would set off a chain of events that would drag me into a battle with the HOA, one that would leave the entire neighborhood stunned. At first, I thought the letter taped to my door was just another reminder about trash bins or lawn length. But when I unfolded it, my hands tightened around the paper. It wasn't about a toy in the yard or an unapproved flower. It was a direct notice about the new addition I had made to my home. The words were sharp, bureaucratic, and cold. Unauthorized modification to property. Immediate removal required. I stared at it, heart pounding. They were talking about my electric vehicle charger. The very thing I had installed legally with permits and with the intention of making my home more efficient. I had checked the codes, spoken to the city, and even made sure it didn't obstruct anything on the property line. Yet here it was. The HOA had decided it violated community guidelines. First, I laughed bitterly. Surely this was a mistake, I thought. All it would take was a quick phone call, maybe an email showing the paperwork. But when I tried, I realized something chilling. They weren't interested in hearing me out. The HOA president wouldn't return my calls. The property manager replied with form letters quoting rules I had never seen before. And when I asked for a copy of these guidelines, I was met with silence. The following week, the harassment began in earnest. Another notice appeared, this time demanding a daily fine until the charger was removed. A neighbor mentioned that board members were gossiping about me at a recent meeting, painting me as someone who thought the rules didn't apply. A friendly wave from across the street suddenly became a suspicious glance. The sense of community I once felt was slipping away, replaced by an invisible wall of hostility. I tried to fight back with logic. I sent copies of the permits. I highlighted the city's approval. But instead of backing down, the HOA doubled their efforts. The fines increased. I started receiving threats of legal action if I continued to defy community standards. One morning, I found a note shoved into my mailbox. No signature, just the words, "Take it down before we do." That was the moment it stopped feeling like a neighborhood dispute and started feeling like a war. Days later, I discovered the worst of it. I came home to find the charger itself torn out, wires dangling where it had once been. The unit, worth thousands, was gone. My stomach dropped. There had been no knock on the door, no official notice. Just destruction. I stood frozen on my driveway, staring at the violation of my property, wondering how far this HOA was willing to go. My first reaction was shock, then rage. I contacted the police, but they brushed it off as a civil matter between a homeowner and an HOA. I contacted the HOA board directly, demanding answers, but they claimed they had no knowledge of the incident. The sheer arrogance of it left me speechless. They had broken something that wasn't theirs, and they thought they could simply hide behind their titles and bylaws. And yet, they didn't stop there. In the following weeks, new notices piled up. They fined me for having exposed wiring. They fined me for failure to maintain property aesthetics. It was insult after insult, as though they were mocking me, daring me to push back. And all the while, I kept seeing board members walking past my home, glancing at the damage they had caused, smirking as if victory was already theirs. Days later, I discovered the worst of it. I came home to find the charger itself torn out, wires dangling where it had once been. The unit, worth thousands, was gone. My stomach dropped. There had been no knock on the door, no official notice. Just destruction. I stood frozen on my driveway, staring at the violation of my property, wondering how far this HOA was willing to go. My first reaction was shock, then rage. I contacted the police, but they brushed it off as a civil matter between a homeowner and an HOA. I contacted the HOA board directly, demanding answers, but they claimed they had no knowledge of the incident. The sheer arrogance of it left me speechless. They had broken something that wasn't theirs, and they thought they could simply hide behind their titles and bylaws. And yet, they didn't stop there. In the following weeks, new notices piled up. They fined me for having exposed wiring. They fined me for failure to maintain property aesthetics. It was insult after insult, as though they were mocking me, daring me to push back. And all the while, I kept seeing board members walking past my home, glancing at the damage they had caused, smirking as if victory was already theirs. One neighbor told me they were fined for hanging a holiday wreath that wasn't on the approved list. Another was threatened with foreclosure over a cracked driveway. These stories piled up, each more absurd than the last, and each confirming what I already knew. The HOA wasn't protecting the community. They were abusing their power one homeowner at a time. The tension in the neighborhood grew thick, like a storm building on the horizon. Some residents avoided me, afraid of being seen on the wrong side. Others quietly offered encouragement, telling me to stand my ground but begging me not to use their names. I began to feel like an outsider in my own home, yet at the same time, I knew I was standing on the edge of something bigger than just my driveway and a broken charger. Every notice, every fine, every sneer from across the street only fueled my determination. They thought they had silenced me by ripping out what I built. But they had made one critical mistake. They underestimated just how far I was willing to go. The HOA may have had their rules, their fines, and their so-called authority, but I had something they weren't prepared for. I had proof, I had patience, and I had a plan that would turn their arrogance against them. And when the moment finally came to strike back, the neighborhood would never forget what happened next. The breaking point didn't come with another letter. It didn't even come with the growing stack of fines that now totaled more than my monthly mortgage payment. It came when I was summoned to what the HOA called a mandatory compliance hearing. The language in the notice was threatening. Failure to attend may result in legal escalation, liens, or foreclosure proceedings. I remember standing outside that meeting room, heart pounding, palms sweating, feeling like I was about to face a firing squad. Through the glass doors, I could see the board members already seated, their papers stacked neatly in front of them like weapons. I had imagined this moment for weeks, and part of me was terrified, but another part of me felt strangely calm, because unlike them, I wasn't walking in unprepared. Still, I wanted the community to see what they had done. So I made my final move public. I posted everything, the permits, the photos, the threatening notes, the insurance report, to the community's online forum. Within hours, the comments exploded. Some residents were horrified. Others admitted they'd been victims, too. People who had once avoided me now realized they had been living under the same cloud of intimidation. The next step was inevitable. Residents began circulating a petition to remove the board. What started as a quiet effort exploded into a movement. Within 2 weeks, over half the community had signed. At the next scheduled election, The once untouchable board members were voted out in a landslide. The president, who had once barked orders at me, could barely raise her head as she packed up her papers and walked away, humiliated in front of the very people she once ruled over. As for me, I rebuilt my peace. A new charger was installed, stronger and safer than before. This time, nobody dared to touch it. Every time I plugged in my car, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not just because I had won against the HOA, but because that charger now stood as a symbol, a reminder that standing up for yourself, even when you feel outnumbered, can turn the tide.